And welcome to the UAS panel on creating a more sustainable future. I am with an illustrious panel of experts who are talking about a topic that is most important to our industry today. And may I introduce them? From my far right, we have Nancy Bsales, who's the COO of 4Air. We have Melanie Prince from F-List, Head of Innovation and Design at F-List. And last but by no means least, we have Daniel Coetzer from Titan Aviation Fuels Europe. I'm going to ask the panel from right to left to tell us a little bit about what their company does. Nancy.
Nancy Bsales. I'm from the COO of 4Air, and we were the first framework for business aviation to get on this journey of sustainability, from anything from offsets to sustainable aviation fuel to reporting, helping both operators, OEMs, FBOs, all stakeholders within the aviation world to really understand what the goals are within aviation and how to get there.
Melanie Prince, Head of Innovation for F-List. We are making cabin interior for business aviation, commercial aviation, super yachts, and luxury residences. We have a heavy focus on innovation, of course, and on sustainability. So we create sustainable materials for the future of aviation.
Daniel Coetzer from Titan Aviation. We are a fuel supplier in the US. We supply FBOs, over 550 FBOs. We are the fuel supplier, expanding into Europe with over 2,500 locations. So we are a reseller, fueling reseller in Europe and a supplier in the US.
And I'd really like to thank the panel for being with us in a very busy show, because this topic is so important. Now, let's talk about carbon offsetting that isn't just greenwashing, and perhaps let's think about a big picture and then something that companies can do straight away in what they do to start to become greener. Nancy, again, I'll turn to you.
So I think the first thing that has to be understood is the goals that are set forth by aviation, looking at it from that 50,000-foot view of carbon neutral from 2019, carbon neutral growth, net zero emissions by 2050 and then looking at the tools that they have us using. And carbon offsetting is a bridge that will get us to the more efficient, more sustainable aviation fuel. But when you're looking at carbon offsets, one of the most important things to do is ensure that it's verified and validated. Because if you want to make sure that what you're funding has an important impact and can be verified to have that impact on the world around us. And how that's done is the carbon offset industry has been in place for well over 30 years. And there are verifications on the project level that ensure that the project will reduce emissions. And then on a yearly basis, you have environmental auditors who come in to make sure that if 10,000 metric tons were supposed to be reduced, those are reduced. And at that point, they're issued to a platform, a public registry, that's when we can offset those and retire those projects, so there's no double counting. So an operator, an owner can say, I'm carbon neutral. I emitted 1,000 metric tons, and I funded 1,000 metric tons that reduced emissions, whether it be through renewable energy or a forestry project or a manufacturing efficiency.
And that's so important, I think, because in the past, I know people have had some dubious offset programs, and I think what you're saying there is verifying and making sure that you're able to verify, which your company does, that you're actually using a proper official audited channel. Now, Melanie, coming to you with what Nancy's just saying, it must be a real creative challenge for you as a company, you as an individual, to start to be greener with your products and supply chain. How do you do that?
It is a fascinating world, and it has to start with what is sustainability in the first place. What are the criteria that are important for us? Is it reduction of CO2 emission? Is it reduction of water consumption? Is it the transportation route? Is it electricity? Is it the overall work of the product? Like how much effort goes into making that product? What happens at the end of life? What about the waste? So we have to compound all of these into one bunch and say, okay, the sustainability values for one material over the other is driving us towards developing this material, this other. So it's a world of opportunities out there, quite frankly, and quite often we have to go back to the roots. What were people doing 100, 200 years ago? They were going back to the bio-based material, the very base of everything, and we have to look back and go back to that, try to remove the quantity of PU content in the materials, and we are in a very, very special area of the business where the passengers, the customers, they are in touch all the time with our components. So they touch it, they feel it all the time. So it has to feel right, it has to look good, it has to be robust, and then put the other requirements on top of that. It makes for a very interesting innovation process, let's say. We have an army of researchers doing just that.
That is, and it's a whole new world and a whole new industry of research as well and development. Can I just ask you one thing? If someone is looking at designing a cabin, what's one material that they could be looking at now to include maybe then the old kind of veneers that people might have used? What can they look at today?
It would take more than 40 minutes to answer that question. So I'm more than happy if anybody wants to come to us. I will show them. I have some stuff here as well. There are liner panel replacement materials that are bio-based. There are structural materials, all sorts of decorative materials made out of either upcycle, circular economy product, or even simply bio-based product that we were able to chemically modify so that they do not burn, that they are resistant and UV resistant as well, environmental conditioning resistant. So we are modifying those materials to bring them to aerospace, and we have a full portfolio of that.
I can see that is well more than a 40. I'm fascinated. And Daniel, before we turn to the fuels, can I ask you, as a company, what are you doing outside of the SAF? We will come to that, but to be more carbon neutral.
Well, we have carbon offsets programs that we do. We have a very good program that we support in the US. I think it's a wind mold program. But we're always looking for better carbon neutral projects to invest in order to get our customers to invest and pay for the innovation. Obviously, it's very difficult to just invest in projects, and everybody will say, plant something on trees and plant this and plant that, but it needs to be structured and nicely done and properly organized. So we have a couple of programs that we're looking to invest in.
And I'm going to come back to that because Daniel has got the most beautiful program and conservation program you support. And again, we'll come back to that later, but that is, stay tuned because this is a really one worth hanging on for the panel for. And now, Melanie, I can't leave this question alone. I'm fascinated. You're talking about an army of researchers as well. Can you just dig a little deeper, guide us through what kind of things that you have to look at when creating a more sustainable cabin?
Absolutely. Our researchers, they have to scout, first of all. Of course, we don't create the materials from scratch ourselves for the most part. When we don't find what we need, we create it ourselves. So that works too. But, it takes a lot of people to scout. All the little startups that have a lot of materials out there, but they don't have the voice to get those materials out, or don't have the means to get them tested, or don't have the know-how to know what does it take to bring a material to aerospace. So we are that connecting point between all those small startups and the aerospace world. We also link the world of luxury products into the aerospace world. So there are a lot of material manufacturers that are already supplying for Gucci, Hermes, made out of vegan components. It is something that the people are really looking for right now, and we are bringing those materials to the aerospace market. So we are again that glue that holds things together. So our researchers, they scout for new materials, and then they have to screen them. So we have to do a preliminary screening test to see, okay, is there any chance to get there? Do we have to modify the material to get there? And is it going to be a lot of work, a little bit of work, or is it impossible? So for everything we screen, we end up with maybe throwing away 19 out of 20 parts. So that 1 out of 20 that we keep, we're going to modify it chemically, or we're going to just simply use it as is. So that's a little bit of part of the process, and then we finalize all those qualification testing, and then we put it in our portfolio.
Yeah, that's so involved. And Nancy, I think this comes back to some of the work that you do in terms of, for those of us who aren't involved in the high-end luxury arena, I have a small company. Can you give me some ideas of what I can start to be doing as an aviation services provider as opposed to an operator? What kind of things that can I do as a small business?
So the things that could be done from a small business to an operator to an OE, like a large manufacturing facility, is you have to start by measuring. You know, the most important piece is to understand what your impact as a company is. And every company, anything that's energy intensive has an impact on the environment and has a CO2 equivalent, a greenhouse gas that's equated to it. So for someone like yourself who's a small company, how much energy are you using at home? What kind of vehicle are you driving? How are you traveling? That's a big one. How are you traveling to things like events like EBACE and to meet with your clients? How are you doing that? And what are ways that you can reduce that easily? Always look at things that are what they call low-hanging fruit. Look at the simple things you can do to reduce that emissions. But when we're looking at more of an operator, more like what Titan is servicing, you know, we're looking at that simple math of what are they burning? What is the fuel they're burning, and what is the emission created from that out of the tailpipe? That 10 kilograms of CO2 for every gallon, and how do we balance that on the other side, right? But a facility, a small business can do the same. Measure your footprint, and then you can actually offset and be carbon neutral as easily as a operator.
And that's really wonderful. So we could look on a 4Air website, for example. Yes. And I know that I'm involved with the EBACE STARS committee we're creating, which is the Young People's Sustainable Aviation of the Future. Although I'm counting myself as a carbon offset young person, but creating sustainability standards, because we absolutely, and that's what I know 4Air does as well, but it's so important that there's places people can find out more about this. And now I have to come to one of the most important elements of the whole chain, which of course is where your company fits in, Daniel. Can you speak to us a little bit about SAF and what are some of the challenges that are provided, maybe coming into Europe, because you head up the European division?
Look, it's very important that we work towards 100% SAF programs, and that's going to take us time. It's going to really take a lot of time. So in the meantime, you know, let's innovate. Let's make the engines that we have better. You know, let's fly higher. Let's do some other projects, and carbon offset is a very good program. There at least you can offset all your fuel. Just putting 5% SAF in your airplane, is that really offsetting it that much? No, you do actually better by doing a carbon offset program at this point in time until we can have like 50 or 80% SAF in the airplane. So it's a good idea. Everybody's working together. I know all the fuel companies work very hard on it. But we need to not forget that oil is there, we're using it, so we're polluting, and let's offset that polluting part as much as we can. Yeah. So the carbon offset programs is very good. There's some very good ones in the market. It became an industry. Before it was not. It became an industry, which is great. Nothing wrong with it. That makes it more competitive and better. Yeah.
Of my limited understanding of aviation fuels, though, I understand that aircraft engines are actually, the modern technology is perfectly capable of flying. The engine doesn't care what's fueling it. It's more being able to, the distribution of SAF. Am I correct?
Exactly. No, so, I mean, if you look at the concept of jet engines was designed how many years ago? The concept is stayed exactly the same. We just made them more efficient, and we must work to make them more efficient. The same with the normal car engine, any engines, you know. The principle of the engine is exactly still the same. But we made them better, we made the fuel injection instead of a carburetor, and we made them much better. So this is what we need to work on in the meantime, while the other guys is developing the SAF for us. And where we're going to make the SAF from, that's also a big question. So, yeah, we just need to try and make things better, fly the airplanes higher, make them better, taxi them on one engine if you can. There's a lot of things we can do in order just to try and save the fuel. We, a fuel company, wouldn't like you to save fuel, but we would like you to use lesser fuel. That's just what we would like.
And that's brilliant. And obviously, UAS has announced that waiving their charges on the handling fees for staff for the next 6 months. Which this is the kind of initiative, I think, that's important, isn't it? To have that something that's demonstrable commitment to making the industry greener. Nancy, you looked as though you could give us some more insight into the fuel component as well.
You talked a bit about the distribution, and that is really where SAF is struggling right now. So we have very little supply and a very big world to supply it to. We have a SAF map on our website that actually it's open source, and it allows any business operator to see where you can uplift SAF. Now, I think we're at about 25, if I remember, 25 locations worldwide that a business operator can directly uplift SAF. Obviously, we're at about 1% SAF globally. They don't even expect us to hit 10% by 2030. So we have a long way to go, and that's a lot of how our framework was built, is that carbon offsets are available today. It's a solution today to be mitigating emissions. And then, our level 2 talks about the contrails, about flying higher in the atmosphere and avoiding those contrails and that extra impact. And then level 3 is about those direct emission reductions. Those are those efficiencies and SAF. But we know that it's going to take us time to get there.
Absolutely. And Daniel, perhaps again, I'm pressing you on this. SAF, what's it made of? What is the difference between SAF and fossil fuel?
SAF is made out of, and yes, it changed over the last couple of years. First they started with palm oil, didn't work very well because there was a lot of things on that. Then it went to algae, and now it's on used oil. And they're going to use some carbon, all bad stuff that we throw away. There's some of the stuff that can really be used. So it's really still really in an innovation program here, that nobody knows exactly. We cannot use food to do that. That's not a good idea. And I don't think anybody will use any food products. So I really think we still need to find something to make it from. At the moment, sorry, we don't have that solution, And this is something that's going to take some years to develop. But this is just something that they need to find out, something that we throw away that will be perfect for fuel. It's time to go.
Yes, I mean, and that really is absolutely essential. It's like it cannot come from the supply chain, and yet when we're talking about the impact that aviation can have on maybe some communities that need people to go in, whether it's with health, whether it's to help people in distress, we can't dispense easily with aviation. So it's how, Nancy, what kind of things do we need to be thinking of to tie all of these things together? And Melanie, I haven't forgotten you. So I'll get back to you in a minute.
I think that Ty just said exactly what Daniel and Melanie had to say, is that you have to look at your operations, you have to look at aviation from the ground up. You have to look at what's going on the ground, whether it's ground support equipment, that maybe you can go to electric ground support equipment. You have to look in your airplane. What are you putting on your aircraft? What kind of water bottles are you putting on your aircraft? What kind of materials are you using? And then going to what are you putting in the wing, right? And we talk about there's approved feedstocks from Corsia at this point, and they ensure that they are not coming from food supply. We're seeing such innovation, and I think if anything that we have to think about is that we are part of the most innovative industry in the world. We can take care of this problem because we are part of this innovative industry. So what this industry is going to look like 20 years from now is going to be amazing. When I'm sitting on a beach watching an airplane go over.
Or jump up from the ground. So, Melanie, what are you thinking about? How would you be, with work that you're doing and the research teams you've got, how do you see the work that you guys are doing kind of converging and perhaps, like you alluded to, in other sectors of the luxury industry? How much crossover is there with people wanting these high-end luxury products?
There's a lot of crossovers, definitely, but they usually work the other way around. We're trying to get off of what they do to bring the materials to what we do. I think in general, to bring things together, one of the big things is really to make sure that the industry keeps an open mind. And I'm tired of hearing, we don't make a difference. Business aviation is less than 0.5% of the CO2 emission. It will matter anyway. It's not true. We make a difference. And maybe it doesn't make a difference on that particular aircraft or that particular aircraft, but as a whole, when we're educating people to be aware and to try to change their means, it flows down the supply chain. I mean, we are located in a very small town in Austria. We have one of the biggest photovoltaic installation in the country. We offset off 20% of that renewable energy to produce our parts. In our local community, it makes a huge difference. So it's all down that supply chain that the industry is being touched that way. It makes a difference for all those industries down the supply chain, and then eventually down the products, materials, what flies, and what happens at end of life. We need to take care of what happens at end of life with those airplanes and bring that back and try to do something meaningful with it. So to me, it's about keeping an open mind and making sure that the message is heard, definitely.
And this is the bit where the panel accused me of not being very kind to you and got you in the spotlight. Young people coming into the industry. Daniel, what do you think is an important message and what can they bring to the industry too? Because obviously, for me, I'm going to be gone long before some of the younger people who are here in the, unless they can bio-freeze me. But what do you think is important? What are you seeing and the questions that your younger team members are putting to you?
There is so much adventure in aviation and in business aviation. There is so much, it's unbelievable, and it's so widely scoped from building cabins to fuel innovation, new products of fuel. There's so many opportunities in aviation. So getting there, if you have an interest in it, young people, we need young minds in here, the bright ones, and everyone in here. But we need them in here because there's a lot of innovation that we need to do in order to continue. We are not going to stop to fly very soon. Mm-hmm. So no, it is an industry which is growing, which is becoming more popular, and we want some young guys in here, young guys and girls in here that can really help us develop it.
And Nancy, 4Air was actually set up by a very dynamic young entrepreneur,
very
Kennedy.
True.
Yes,
very true.
Vicky. So tell us a little about
I think it definitely lends itself to saying, what does the new generation want to see in this industry? So they want to see it continue to grow, but we also know that it can grow while we decouple the carbon growth from it. And I think we have to remember that challenges bring innovation and opportunity. And I think if anybody can rise to that challenge, it's the new generation coming up.
And Melanie, how about, thank you very much, I totally agree. And Melanie, how about your research team? Are they primarily, have you got younger elements? What's that look like?
I love getting the younger generation into the team because they actually care. It's not about being a job, it's not about the money, it's not about doing business. They care about making a difference. And that is a different perspective altogether from sometimes we're getting distracted into trying to sell it without caring, is it that pragmatic at the end of the day? Is it greenwashing or is it real? And the younger generation, as they come into the team, they actually care that this makes an actual pragmatic difference, and they come to work with their bike because they make their own little difference. So it's a different ambience, and I love it.
Right. And now we're all going to say one passion project that's towards a sustainable future. Again, throwing this out at the panel who hadn't expected. Nancy, have you got a project that's close to your heart?
So I think we're speaking to like a carbon offset project?
Yes, a green project, sustainable project.
Okay, so I'm going to say, there's so many of them actually, because it's amazing what a lot of these projects do. But there's a project that we have worked with and funded called Mayandambi. It's in the DRC. It's a beautiful forestry Red Plus project that's verified through Vera. So it can be used by any corporation, but when you start to see the work that's being done on the ground there for the community, as well as the forestation project, education, healthcare. I think people forget how important business aviation, general aviation is to these remote areas, and what we can bring there, and also how we can fund these projects to really help these communities just thrive.
Thank you. That sounds brilliant. Melanie?
Yeah, we do have a project where we have scouted some plants and some trees which would be useful in building new materials for aerospace, and we are able to grow them at our headquarters. So we are planting our own plants and trees to build our own material out of our own growth of those plants. So we're using out of our restaurant the compost material, and we're growing those plants, and then we're trying also to bring the end-of-life material back into the cycle as well. So this is one of the projects we're attacking this year.
I love these because they're also team-building projects. And Daniel, I was very, very taken with your project too. Can you tell us a little bit about that one?
Everybody is like on green projects and stuff. We looked at something differently years ago already. Nature conservation is very important. If you look at the animals on the endangered list, it's a long list and it's growing. So we have 2 rhino orphanages that we support as baby rhinos. The mothers are killed just for the horn, for nothing else, just for the horn. And then the baby rhinos stay for 2 to 3 years with their mother, drinking milk. So then they are just left in the wild. So we have a project where we take these baby rhinos. They go into an orphanage, and it's great. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of hard work because you must feed them 6 to 8 times a day with milk. So it's very difficult, very complex, but it's very rewarding. Yes, I know it creates this nothing green for the planet, but it's really nature conservation. It's something that we really need to work on a little bit more, and I think the business aviation community can maybe do a little bit more in that. Just animals are disappearing, and we need to try and help them.
I totally agree, and preserving species is essential. So from having some wonderful planting projects, beautiful baby rhinos, and I'll give a little plug to this STARS project that I'm involved with EBACE. That's a project close to my heart that brings the community together. We're speaking a panel at 4:30 tomorrow, but for now, I am delighted and honoured that UAS has brought together some wonderful people. Really wonderful to get to know you all a little more and about what you do. Please check out what these guys are doing around the show. I'm sure you're available. So thank you again to Nancy Bsales, Melanie Brantz, and Daniel Coetzer. Thank you very much. I'm Liz Moscrop. Au revoir.